Hello, everybody. This is Joe the Lawyer, and welcome to the Analog Man Cave. So, today's topic, a little interesting. You guys have all heard of race as class. It was the old basic or BX version, or even Holmes, where you had dwarves were a race and a class. Elves were a race and a class, right? Oh, even OD&D. The elves were both magic users or fighters, depending on what class they wanted to play that day, right? So this is something I never liked. It didn't make any sense. Like dwarves and elves they worship gods, right? Why wouldn't they have clerics or priests in there? How come the class you could only play for an elf was a fighter slash magic user, depending on the day you picked an OD&D? Why couldn't dwarves have adventuring priests? Things like that. There's no gnome thieves. You know what I mean? It just didn't make any sense to me. So I did welcome that change when you had the demi-human classes or races able to play different classes. Even then, you had some limitations both on what class they could play and what level. Okay, I like that. I did like that. I took away the class the level limits in exchange for having an XP penalty. That's sort of my way to balance it out because you're starting out front loaded with a lot of things as an elf or a dwarf or whatever, right? So I took that away, and so that is something I'm sort of doing with my game now. Is I'm tinkering with it. I'm letting them play any class they want, depending on their race. But what I did with humans is something a little bit unique. When I'm creating a new setting for my new RPG, Joe's Fantasy Heartbreaker, right? I figured, why not? Let's create a whole new setting for it. I'm importing ideas and themes from my second edition Forgotten Realms campaign, and which preceded by the fifth edition Forgotten Realms campaign. There's a lot of history there. When I broke the realms, I broke the campaign so much, there's nothing really related to Forgotten Realms other than a map and some place names. So I figured I'm just going to take all these different ideas and I'm going to port them over to a different setting. The history I made up, the ancient history, the current history, all that stuff, I'm going to port it over. Right now, I'm keeping my ideas about demi-humans and what classes they could play and whatnot with the level cap, but what I am doing with humans is a little bit different. Typical humans are going to be your average city dweller, your countryside folks, whatever. They can play whatever class they want, right? You're gonna have a hard time justifying where a tiny 100-person village, kid learned how to be a thief, for example. It's going to be more difficult to justify it, but there are ways around that. However, I'm going to have special races, all right, special human races, and this goes back to my conception of what Mother Nature is, or the creative force of this world. In my game, she is a constant source of creativity and development, and she created some of these older races of more primitive humans. And in this new era, this new epoch of the world, she's creating a handful of other races that are attuned with her, aligned with her. They're going to have shamans and druids related to her. And I'm going to have them occupy various geographical regions. So there's going to be sort of like the desert scrublands, sub race of humans. There's going to be the forest ones, the mountain ones, the jungle ones, the plains ones, right? What I'm modeling these after is real things from history. Like basically the Mongolians, right? They're the Mongolian steppes. They're going to be a thing. The forests are going to be modeled after Gaul, right? You might have some desert ones modeled after the Scythians, for example. Things like that. Now, if you understand where I'm going with this, you might be able to figure it out so far. Now, the Mongolians, it would be hard to justify having a Mongolian druid. They are a shamanistic people in my campaign, right? I'm going to call them something else. They're not going to be called Mongolians, obviously, but they have shamans. You're not going to be hard pressed to find a Mongolian city thief, right? You're going to be hard pressed to find certain classes amongst a typical Mongolian. Likewise with the Gauls, you're going to have druids, you're going to have warriors. You may not have wizards, though, right? They're not going to be an applicable race. Taking it to fiction, think about Dune, right? The Fremen. I think everybody is, who listens to this channel, God, I hope you've read or watched Dune. But the Dune Fremen, right? There's no thieves. you got they're all warriors, right? You got the priestesses, the Bene Gesserit priests who take it over, but before that they had their wise woman, and they had warriors, and that's it. All right, you're there. So if you have an equivalent translation to a D&D setting, you're not going to have thieves, you're not going to have wizards, you're not going to have certain classes. However, what I am going to do with each of these different like human sub races that are sort of like spawning up in the middle of this campaign organically over a period of several hundred years, I'm going to give them special abilities. The average, normal, typical human is going to be the ones dwelling in the cities, the ones dwelling in the farms, the ones dwelling in the regular lands. But there's going to be 5 or 6 special geographic areas where these subhuman races spring up from. They will have different genetic abilities because they're not going to be standard humans. They're going to have different cultural abilities because they will be brought up in a certain culture. They might have, if they're horse riding people, they might get a +2 to attack with a falchion or a scimitar while horseback riding, or +1 damage with the short bow if they're the typical Mongolian type or something like that, right? Horse tricks, whatever it might be. These things will not be available to other races. These subhuman races, I say subhuman because they're a subcategory of the human race. They're not subhuman like mine, humans who live in the center of the earth and come up and kill everybody like the Morlocks or something. They're not subhuman in that sense. They are just humans of a different type, specially created by Mother Nature, the life force of this world, to better increase her power over the world. Okay. So there's the sort of the mythology behind it. And these cultural human races, sub-races, they will have different abilities than the normal ones, right? They'll also have certain limitations too. Like I said, there's no magic users, no wizards in the Mongolians, right? Yeah, you're not going to have something like that. If I have a race of aesthetic monks, there might, who knows, I might come up with a race, sub-race that has aesthetics in there, and they might have hand-to-hand combat. I don't think I'm going to do that, but you sort of get where I'm going with this. It's a different way of looking at it. It's not race as class, because that was a demi-human thing. This is more like human subculture as class, in a sense that you're going to have a certain handful of classes based on where they come from, and each of those subhuman races will have certain abilities built in genetically, because that's how Mother Nature intended it to be, right? That's what she wants to do. That is to increase her power over the world. And the normal humans will be at war with these sub races in some cases, because they will have different cultural outlooks on things, just like in real life, just like in real life in the world everywhere else. So whether you call them humans or subhumans, or I guess you can't call them demi-humans, how about semi-humans, right? Whatever it's going to be, culture will determine the class of my campaign for certain groups of people. All right. So it's just an idea I'm tossing around, and I just have to work out the details of it. Just once I get the map down, I'll figure out where they're going to be. There's going to be some mountain people, some forest people, some swamp people, some desert scrublands people, something like that. Maybe ocean, maybe a river. I'm not sure, but everyone will have a certain flair to them. Now it's going to make it hard for those folks to role play with a normal group. There needs to be some sort of a justification for them to be leaving their area, their tribe. I've even come up with an idea that basically it's the land itself that creates this subrace. It's the land itself that sort of emanates a power. It emanates sort of a creative force, a vibration, that if a human from the city moved into the forest, where this certain forest where these emanations are taking place, the human from the city, they will slowly be a little bit transformed the more they live in this area. But their children, if they give birth to a child there, this child will come out genetically different than mother and father. They will come out genetically alike with whatever subrace of humans lives there at the time. So they will have those genetic abilities, whereas the mother and father who moved there later on in life may be able to learn some of the cultural skills, like horseback riding, shooting from the horseback with a bow, or whatever it might be. But their offspring will be definitely genetically different than their parents in a very significant way. The other thing I'm tossing around here is a certain look. I mean, the Fremen look different than various other fantasy or sci-fi races, right? They have a certain look and feel. I'm thinking there might be a same thing here. Like, I mean, the Celts, the Gauls, they all look different than the Scythians, for example. So I'm thinking there might be in addition to the genetic that the component that gives them special abilities, I'm thinking I might have something where they have a certain look and feel too. You know, dark skin, blue eyes, and red hair. Some weird combo that makes them really, really stand out. You know what I mean? That could be interesting as well. Maybe give them an extra digit on their hands to show a new evolution of a new, type of human. Maybe they have 6 digits on their finger, on their hands and their hands and feet, something like that. I'm just tossing it around, just to signify that they are not human. They are not your typical humans. It's really they call them a sub race, but in a sense, they're a very different race entirely. So anyway, that's just, some things I'm tossing around there as culture determines certain class abilities and what classes you can be in my campaign. So if you guys have any ideas about it, any tips you want to throw out there, shoot them over to me. I always like the comments. I always answer all your comments that you make there, and I like to interact with everybody. So, and also, please like this thing, subscribe, and share it out, because I'm close to 2,000 subs, guys. I'm at 30 subs, 28 subs away. So I want to get there by January 1st. It'd be a good way to end this year. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.